Alright, today we're comparing the Ibanez RG5121 versus the Ibanez RG652. I'm thinking of making a series where I just informally compare two of my guitars from my collection. And so in this first installment, we're comparing these two Ibanez Prestiges. One of them has the active Fishman Fluence Moderns. One of them I've put in the DiMarzio D Activators. Is this the most scientific test? Not really, but we can compare how these guitars sound. One of them has a mahogany body, the other one has the ash. We've got the maple fretboard and the ebony fretboard, stainless steel frets, classic nickel silver frets. We've got a blocked bridge right here that's the edge, and of course a fixed bridge. Will these different pickups, woods, frets, all these differences, will it matter when it comes to how it sounds? I'm going to demonstrate these in a full mix and then in isolation too. And in doing this, I'm going to be using the same presets for each track, each test. So in the full mix, of course, all the rhythm guitars, they're using the same preset, the same plugin, all the leads, cleans, etc. And then same with the isolation tests. And I'll be using voice 1 of the Fishmans because I've always ever used the voice 1. So let me know if you'd like to see me compare two other guitars from my collection. And by the way, I'm not sponsored by any of the brands shown or used in this video. So let's jump right in and hear how these sound in a full mix. So there you have it. I could hear a difference between how each sounded. This RG5121 with the Fishman Fluence Actives, it sounded more clear, more bright, especially with the cleans. The RG652 in direct contrast had a bit more mellow of a sound. It didn't quite have that extreme top end, that high end. When it comes to rhythms, you can hear that Fishman kind of active tone. More on that later when we talk about the leads. The rhythms played through the D Activator bridge. Of course, it's a passive pickup, so it had more of that passive kind of tone. I would describe that as not as much treble, not as much upper high end, either sheen or maybe even fizz. That's probably going to be the difference between whether you like the actives or the passives. Now for the leads in the songs, you could really hear the active tone versus the passive. It does seem to sit fine in the mix. It really does stand out. It really cuts through. Maybe it's a bit much. I wouldn't say it's exactly clashing with the cymbals, but I would be a little concerned. I might want to tame those a little bit. Those being the highest, the treble with these pickups. So in direct comparison, the deactivators don't quite cut us through. They don't have that high-end power. Maybe even not as much upper mid-range power. So in a mix, it might need some more help coming through, if that's what you're trying to do. So maybe add some more upper mids, maybe turn up the treble if you want more treble, if that's what you're going for. But then you have to ask yourself, are you doing more just to make these sound like the Fishman Fluence, the actives? You could ask, is that going to match then your personal preference? Is that going to match also what the song needs? I could also see how putting a low pass filter on the guitar with the active pickups to make it sound not passive, but I guess to tame the highs, that could be done too. In a way, it becomes a question of would you rather do this or that? And then you're still left with the active tone versus passive tone debate. And speaking of active versus passive, let's hear how these sound in isolation. Okay, it's always interesting to hear guitar tones that are intended for a mix in isolation. You don't have the bass, the drums, all that stuff, all those other frequencies flying around. And so you can really hear how the Fishmans, the actives, have just so much trouble. It's really salient. I think I definitely would want to put that low pass filter on these. I think it's also important to talk about the order in which we're hearing these. I've been putting this guitar first, and then this guitar, the actives first, and then the passives. So your ear is getting used to higher treble, and then we're switching to something with a bit less treble. What if I put these in the other order? What if I put the passives first and then the Fishmans? Would these sound too bright and this would sound just fine? Maybe listen to the playthroughs with the passives first and then the actives and see if that holds up for your ears. So the rhythm with the RG5121 really rolls off the tongue. But the rhythm, it definitely was cutting. There are definitely highs in there. The cleans almost had too much highs. It sounded maybe a bit thin. Again, that tone is intended for the mix, but it really illustrates the characteristics of these pickups. And then the leads, it definitely had treble. It definitely was full, dialed to be full. And it had that kind of active tone. So again, the difference between you liking this one or this one might be whether you like or need that kind of active sound profile. So for the D Activators in isolation especially, the rhythm tone sounded really solid. It didn't have too much of anything I didn't want. It had everything I did want, some nice, satisfying mid-range. The cleans were a bit bright, but it was more in line with what I'd look for. The lead sounded bright too, but it wasn't as excessive as the Fishmans. I think I would have to do less to get it to sound mix and master ready. And also in a full mix situation, in a band situation, it also comes into question what the bass tone is. Would you need different bass tones for these two different guitars? Maybe. So some overall thoughts. Did it matter which guitar I was using? Well, yes it did. To us guitarists, it does matter. To get that final mix and master sound ready, you would have to do different things to the signals coming out of these guitars. Different enough. Maybe you're still going to run a compressor. Maybe you're going to put a low pass filter on anyway. Just good standard things to do. Maybe not. It really depends what you're going for in terms of sound. You have to ask, why do we have a preferred configuration? Why would we pick actives over passives? To a non-guitar player, to someone in the audience, does it even matter? Are they even going to hear the difference? Especially live, are they going to be able to hear the difference? And if they could detect the difference, would they even care? You could say they're going there just to hear good music and see good performance. To the guitarist playing it though, the feel, quote unquote, of the pickup would matter. Do you want that active power? Or do you like the sound of the passive pickups? And then of course, should you even worry about getting the exact pickups you absolutely love if the guitar has all the other specs you want? Like what if you like passive pickups, but you want a fixed bridge, you want the stainless steel frets and the ebony fretboard? What if this guitar is absolutely perfect for you, except you're not the biggest fan of actives? Would that matter? Because you can change your amp settings, your plug-in preset settings. You can throw EQ on there. And again, what do the other instruments that you're playing with sound like? If they all have far less treble than you, of course minus the cymbals on the drums, and then you get something with more treble, would that be a consideration? Would you have to tame that? I think unless it's an extreme difference, like a single coil to a humbucker, pickups would matter there. But if you're doing two different humbuckers, maybe active versus passive is going to matter a bunch. But how much is it really going to matter versus your amp settings and stuff? So which one would I pick between these two? Obviously, I wouldn't pick just one because I bought both of them. These are mine. I'm keeping them. But that's a pretty safe answer, so let's jump into that. The RG5121 is slightly nicer. It is at a higher price point. It has a lot more features that I tend to prefer. The stainless steel frets, I'm personally a fan of. If you do like the nickel silver frets, that classic feel, that's fine. These are tools for our trade. We need to pick what works for us the best to make music. I do appreciate the simplicity of the fixed bridge, and it is fun to wield that active power. On the other hand, the RG652, it has a mixture of a lightweight ash body with the weight of the tremolo bridge, which is what I'm more used to through my years of playing. It does have the nickel silver frets, which aren't my preferred favorite, but they're not terrible. And I do really love the passive pickups. Passives in general, I've tended to gravitate towards actives in the past, but passives I am starting to like more and more. And it is because of less treble and stuff. And I am nostalgic for these pickups in particular, the DiMarzio D Activators, because back in the day, like a decade ago, when I was playing in bands live, I was running a guitar with these. I had an S470 and I installed DiMarzio D Activators in them. I'm also a fan of the extreme stability of a blocked double locking system. So if I could pick only one guitar, it would be the RG652. And hey, when I wear out the frets on this guitar, I will refret it with stainless steel frets, so I'll get the specs I want in the end. But that being said, I don't think this guitar is bad. I don't think it's worse. This was just my personal preference. I think the Actives do sound pretty good. They sound pretty cool. Obviously, I like the stainless steel. I like the ebony fretboard. Mahogany is a classic, especially with Actives. If this guitar had passives, I think it would have won. And not just any passives, but passives I would have liked too. Maybe bare knuckles, maybe some DiMarzios like the D Activators, things like that. And again, these guitars are both winners because I both plan to keep them for many years to come. So there you have it. What do you think? Which guitar sounded better or maybe even looked better to your ears or eyes? Do you have any questions? Are there things I didn't cover that you would like to know? Be sure to ask in the comment section down below. Of course, this is YouTube, so I have to say the YouTube things, all right? Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share the video, print out every frame and mail it, check out the Patreon, join the Discord, become a channel member, do a backflip, and as always, peace.